Adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rouse. Jataka number. Color Kanala Jataka. Small of wit, etc. This birth will be given under the Kanala birth. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rouse. Jataka number. Bada Sala Jataka. Who are you, etc. This story the master told while living in Jetavana monastery about doing good to one's friends and family. At Shravasti city in the house of Anatha Pindika, there was always unfailing food for 500 brethren, and the same with Visakha and the king of Kosala. But in the king's palace, various and fine as was the food given, no one was friendly to the brethren. The result was that the brethren never ate in the palace, but they took their food and went off to eat it at the house of Anatha Pindika or Visakha or some other of the trusted friends. One day the king said, "A present has been brought. Take this to the brethren," and sent it to the room for meals. An answer was brought that no brethren were there in the room for meals. "Where are they gone?" he asked. "They were sitting in their friends' houses to eat," was the reply. So the king after his morning meal came into the master's presence, and asked him, "Good sir, what is the best kind of food?" "The food of friendship is the best, great king," said he. "Even sour rice porridge given by a friend becomes sweet." "Well, sir, and with whom do the brethren find friendship?" "With their familiar, great king, or with the Shakya families." Then the king thought, what if he were to make a Shakya girl his queen wife? Then the brethren would be his friends, as it were with their own family. So rising from his seat, he returned to the palace, and sent a message to Kapilavastu to this effect: "Please give me one of your daughters in marriage, for I wish to become connected with your family." On receipt of this message the shakyas gathered together and deliberated. "We live in a place subject to the authority of the king of Kosala. If we refuse a daughter, he will be very angry, and if we give her, the custom of our clan will be broken. What are we to do?" Then King Mahanama of Kapilavastu said to them, "Do not trouble about it. I have a daughter, named Vasavikshatriya. Her mother is a slave woman, Nagamunda by name. She is some 16 years of age, of great beauty and auspicious prospects, and by her father's side noble. We will send her, as a girl nobly born." The shakyas agreed, and sent for the messengers, and said they were willing to give a daughter of the clan, and that they might take her with them at once. But the messengers thought, these shakyas are desperately proud, in matters of birth. Suppose they should send a girl who was not of them, and say that she was so? "We will take none but one who eats along with them." So they replied, "Well, we will take her, but we will take one who eats along with you." The shakyas assigned a lodging for the messengers, and then wondered what to do. King Mahanama said, "Now do not trouble about it. I will find a way. At my mealtime bring in Vasavikshatriya dressed up in her finery. Then just as I have taken one mouthful, produce a letter, and say, 'My lord, such a king has sent you a letter. Be pleased to hear his message at once.'" They agreed, and as he was taking his meal, they dressed and adorned the maid. "Bring my daughter," said King Mahanama, "and let her take food with me." "In a moment," said they, "as soon as she is properly adorned," and after a short delay they brought her in. Expecting to take food with her father, she dipped her hand into the same dish. King Mahanama had taken one mouthful with her, and put it in his mouth. But just as he stretched out his hand for another, they brought him a letter, saying, "My lord, such a king has sent a letter to you. Be pleased to hear his message at once." Said King Mahanama, Go on with your meal, my dear," and holding his right hand in the dish, with his left took the letter and looked at it. As he examined the message, the girl went on eating. When she had eaten, he washed his hand and rinsed out his mouth. The messengers were firmly convinced that she was his daughter, for they did not divulge the secret. So King Mahanama sent away his daughter in great pomp. The messengers brought her to Shravasti city, and said that this girl was the true-born daughter of King Mahanama. The king was pleased, and caused the whole city to be decorated, and placed her upon a pile of treasure, and by a ceremonial sprinkling made her his chief queen. She was dear to the king, and beloved. In a short time the queen conceived, and the king caused the proper treatment to be used. And at the end of 10 months, she brought on a son whose color was a golden brown. On the day of his naming, the king sent a message to his grandmother, saying, "A son has been born to Vasavikshatriya, daughter of the Shakya king. What shall his name be?" Now the courtier who was charged with this message was slightly deaf. But he went and told the king's grandmother. When she heard it, she said, "Even when Vasavikshatriya had never borne a son, she was more than all the world. And now she will be the king's darling." The deaf man did not hear the word darling properly, but thought she said Vidudabha. So back he went to the king, and told him that he was to name the prince Vidudabha. This, the king thought, must be some ancestral family name, and so named him Vidudabha. After this the prince grew up treated as a prince should be. When he was at the age of 7 years, having observed how the other princes received presents of toy elephants and horses and other toys from the family of their mothers' fathers, the boy said to his mother, "Mother, the rest of them get presents from their mother's family, but no one sends me anything. Are you an orphan?" Then she replied, "My boy, your grandfathers are the Shakya kings, but they live a long way off, and that is why they send you nothing." Again when he was 16, he said, "Mother, I want to see your father's family." "Don't speak of it, child," she said. "What will you do when you get there?" But though she put him off, he asked her again and again. At last his mother said, "Well, go then." So the boy got his father's consent, and set out with a number of followers. Vasavikshatriya sent on a letter before him to this effect: "I am living here happily. Let not my masters tell him anything of the secret." But the Shakyas, on hearing of the coming of Vidudabha, sent off all their young children into the country. "It is impossible," said they, "to receive him with respect." When the prince arrived at Kapilavastu, the Shakyas had assembled in the royal rest house. The prince approached the rest house, and waited. Then they said to him, "This is your mother's father, this is her brother," pointing him out. He walked from one to the other, saluting them. But although he bowed to them till his back ached, not one of them offered a greeting. So he asked, "Why is it that none of you greet me?" The Shakyas replied, "My dear, the youngest princes are all in the country." Then they entertained him grandly. After a few days' stay, he set out for home with all his group of attendants. Just then a slave woman washed the seat which he had used in the rest house with milk water, saying insultingly, "Here's the seat where sat the son of Vasavikshatriya, the slave girl." A man who had left his spear behind was just fetching it, when he overheard the abuse of Prince Vidudabha. He asked what it meant. He was told that Vasavikshatriya was born of a slave to King Mahanama the Shakya. This he told to the soldiers. A great uproar arose, all shouting, "Vasavikshatriya is a slave woman's daughter, so they say." The prince heard it. "Yes," thought he, "let them pour milk water over the seat I sat in, to wash it. When I am king, I will wash the place with their heart's blood. When he returned to Shravasti city, the courtiers told the whole matter to the king. The king was enraged against the shakyas for giving him a slave's daughter to wife. He cut off all allowances made to Vasavikshatriya and her son, and gave them only what is proper to be given to slave men and women. Some few days later, the master came to the palace, and took a seat. The king approached him, and with a greeting said, "Sir, I am told that your clansmen gave me a slave's daughter to wife. I have cut off their allowances, mother and son, and grant them only what slaves would get." Said the master, "The shakyas have done wrong, O great king. If they gave any one, they should have given a girl of their own blood. But, O king, this I say. Vasavikshatriya is a king's daughter, and in the house of a noble king she has received the ceremonial sprinkling. Vidudabha too was begotten by a noble king. Wise men of old have said, what matters the mother's birth? The birth of the father is the measure. And to a poor wife, a picker of sticks, they gave the position of queen wife. And the son born of her obtained the power of governing of Benares, 12 leagues in extent, and became King Katavahana, the wood carrier. Upon which he told him the story of the Katahari birth. When the king heard this speech he was pleased. And saying to himself, the father's birth is the measure of the man, he again gave mother and son the treatment suited to them. Now the king's commander-in-chief was a man named Bandula. His wife, Malika, was barren, and he sent her away to Kusinara, telling her to return to her own family. "I will go," said she, "when I have saluted the master." She went to Jetavana monastery, and greeting the Tathagata stood waiting on one side. "Where are you going?" he asked. She replied, "My husband has sent me home, sir." "Why?" asked the master. "I am barren, sir, I have no son." "If that is all," said he, "there is no reason why you should go. Return." She was much pleased, and saluting the master went home again. Her husband asked her why she had come back. She answered, "The Dasabala sent me back, my lord." "Then," said the commander-in-chief, "the Tathagata must have seen good reason." The woman soon after conceived, and when her cravings began, told him of it. "What is it you want?" he asked. "My lord," said she, "I desire to go and bathe and drink the water of the tank in Vaishali city, where the families of the kings get water for the ceremonial sprinkling." The commander-in-chief promised to try. Seizing his bow, strong as 1,000 bows, he put his wife in a chariot, and left Shravasti city, and drove his chariot to Vaishali city. Now at this time there lived close to the gate a Lichavi named Mahali, who had been educated by the same teacher as the king of Kosala's general, Bandula. This man was blind, and used to advise the Lichavas on all matters worldly and spiritual. Hearing the clatter of the chariot as it went over the threshold, he said, "The noise of the chariot of Bandula the Malian. This day there will be fear for the Lichavas." By the tank there was set a strong guard, within and without. Above it was spread an iron net. Not even a bird could find room to get through. But the general, dismounting from his chariot, put the guards to flight with the blows of his sword, and burst through the iron network, and in the tank bathed his wife and gave her to drink of the water. Then after bathing himself, he set Malika in the chariot, and left the town, and went back by the way he came. The guards went and told all to the Lichavas. Then were the kings of the Lichavas angry. And 500 of them, mounted in 500 chariots, departed to capture Bandula the Malian. They informed Mahali of it, and he said, "Go not." for he will kill you all." But they said, "No, but we will go. Then if you come to a place where a wheel has sunk up to the half, you must return. If you return not then, return back from that place when you hear the noise of a thunderbolt. If then you turn not, turn back from that place where you shall see a hole in front of your chariots. Go no further." But they did not turn back according to his word, but pursued on and on. Mallika saw them and said, "There are chariots in sight, my lord." "Then tell me," said he, "when they all look like one chariot." When they all in a line looked like one, she said, "My lord, I see as it were the head of one chariot." "Take the reins, then," said he, and gave the reins into her hand. He stood upright in the chariot, and strung his bow. The chariot wheels sank into the earth half deep. The Lichavas came to the place, and saw it, but turned not back. The other went on a little further, and twanged the bowstring. Then came a noise as the noise of a thunderbolt, yet even then they turned not, but pursued on and on. Bandula stood up in the chariot and shot a shaft. And it split the heads of all the 500 chariots, and passed right through the 500 kings in the place where the waist belt is fastened, and then buried itself in the earth. They not perceiving that they were wounded pursued still, shouting, "Stop, follower, stop." Bandula stopped his chariot, and said, "You are dead men, and I cannot fight with the dead." "What?" said they, "dead, such as we now are." "Loose the waist belt of the first man," said Bandula. They untied his waist belt, and at the instant the waist belt was untied, he fell dead. Then he said to them, "You are all of you in the same condition. Go to your homes, and set in order what should be ordered, and give your directions to your wives and families, and then remove your armor." They did so, and then all of them gave up the ghost. And Bandula conveyed Mallika to Shravasti city. She had twin sons 16 times in succession, and they were all mighty men and heroes, and became perfected in all manner of accomplishments. Each one of them had 1,000 men to attend him, and when they went with their father to wait on the king, they alone filled the courtyard of the palace to overflowing. One day some men who had been defeated in court on a false charge, seeing Bandula approach, raised a great outcry, and informed him that the judges of the court had supported a false charge. So Bandula went into the court, and judged the case, and gave each man his own. The crowd uttered loud shouts of applause. The king asked what it meant, and on hearing was much pleased. All those officers he sent away, and gave Bandula charge of the judgment court, and from then he judged properly. Then the former judges became poor, because they no longer received bribes, and they slandered Bandula in the king's ear, accusing him of aiming at the kingdom himself. The king listened to their words, and could not control his suspicions. But, he thought, if he be killed here, I shall be blamed. He bribed certain men to harass the frontier districts. Then sending for Bandula, he said, "The borders are in a blaze. Go with your sons and capture the robbers." With him he also sent other men sufficient, mighty men of war, with instructions to kill him and his 32 sons, and cut off their heads, and bring them back. While he was yet on the way, the hired robbers got wind of the general's coming, and took to flight. He settled the people of that district in their homes, and quieted the province, and set out for home. Then when he was not far from the city, those warriors cut off his head and the heads of his sons. On that day Mallika had sent an invitation to the 2 chief disciples along with 500 of the brethren. Early in the forenoon a letter was brought to her, with news that her husband and sons had lost their heads. When she heard this, without a word to a soul, she tucked the letter in her dress, and waited upon the company of the brethren. Her attendants had given rice to the brethren. When bringing in a bowl of ghee, they happened to break the bowl just in front of the elders. Then the captain of the faith said, "Pots are made to be broken. Do not trouble about it." The lady produced her letter from the fold of her dress, saying, "Here I have a letter informing me that my husband and his 32 sons have been beheaded. If I do not trouble about that, am I likely to trouble when a bowl is broken?" The captain of the faith now began, unseen, unknown, and so on, then rising from his seat uttered a discourse, and went home. She summoned her 32 daughters-in-law, and to them said, "Your husbands, though innocent, have reaped the fruit of their former deeds. Do not you grieve, nor commit a sin of the soul worse even than the king's." This was her advice. The king's spies hearing this speech brought word to him that they were not angry. Then the king was distressed, and went to her living, and craving pardon of Malika and her sons' wives, offered a boon. She replied, "Be it accepted." She set out the funeral feast, and bathed, and then went before the king. "My lord," said she, "you granted me a boon. I want nothing but this, that you permit my 32 daughters-in-law and me to go back to our own homes." The king consented. Each of her 32 sons' wives she sent away to her home, and herself returned to the home of her family in the city of Kusinara. And the king gave the post of commander-in-chief to one digger Karyana, sister's son to the general Bandula. But he went about picking faults in the king and saying, "He murdered my uncle." Ever after the murder of the innocent Bandula, the king was devoured by remorse, and had no peace of mind, felt no joy in being king. At that time the master lived near a country town of the shakyas, named Alumpa. There went the king, pitched a camp not far from the park, and with a few attendants went to the monastery to salute the master. The 5 symbols of royalty he handed to Karyana, and alone entered the perfumed chamber. All that followed must be described as in the Dharmasitya Sutta. When he entered the perfumed chamber, Karyana took those symbols of royalty, and made Vidudabha king. And leaving behind for the king 1 horse and a serving woman, he went to Shravasti city. After a pleasant conversation with the master, the king on his return saw no army. He inquired of the woman, and learnt what had been done. Then set out for the city of Rajgraha city, resolved to take his nephew with him, and capture Vidudabha. It was late when he came to the city, and the gates were shut. And lying down in a shed, exhausted by exposure to wind and sun, he died there. When the night began to grow brighter, the woman began to wail, "My lord, the king of Kosala is past help." The sound was heard, and news came to the king. He performed the funeral rites of his uncle with great magnificence. Vidudabha, once firmly established on the throne, remembered that grudge of his, and determined to destroy the shakyas one and all. To which end he set out with a large army. That day at dawn the master, looking on over the world, saw destruction threatening his family. "I must help my family," thought he. In the forenoon he went in search of alms. Then after returning from his meal lay down lion-like in his perfumed chamber. And in the evening time, having passed through the air to a spot near Kapilavastu, sat beneath a tree that gave scanty shade. Hard by that place, a huge and shady banyan tree stood on the boundary of Vidudabha's realms. Vidudabha, seeing the master approached and saluting him, said, "Why, sir, are sitting under so thin a tree in all this heat? Sit beneath this shady banyan, sir." He replied, "Let be, O king. The shade of my family keeps me cool." The master, thought the other, must have come here to protect his clansmen. So he saluted the master, and returned again to Shravasti city. And the master rising went to Jetavana monastery. A second time the king called to mind his grudge against the shakyas. A second time he set on, and again saw the master seated in the same place, then again returned. A fourth time he set out. And the master, scanning the former deeds of the shakyas, perceived that nothing could do away with the effect of their evil doing, in throwing poison into the river. So he did not go there the fourth time. Then King Vidudabha killed all the shakyas, beginning with babes at the breast, and with their heart's blood washed the bench, and returned. On the day after the master had gone out for the third time and returned. He, having gone his rounds for alms, and his meal over, was resting in his perfumed chamber. The brethren gathered from all directions into the hall of truth, and seating themselves, began to tell of the virtues of the great being. Sirs, the master but showed himself, and turned the king back, and set free his kinsman from fear of death. A helpful friend is the master to his clan. The master entered, and asked what they talked of as they sat there. They told him. Then he said, "Not now only, brethren, does the Tathagata act for the benefit of his kinsman. He did the same long ago." With these words, he told a story of the past. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta ruled as king in Benares, and observed the 10 royal virtues, he thought to himself, "All over India the kings live in palaces supported by many a column. There is no marvel, then, in a palace supported by many columns. But what if I make a palace with one column only to support it? Then I shall be the highest king of all kings." So he summoned his builders, and told them to build him a magnificent palace supported on one column. "Very good," said they, and away they went into the forest. There they saw many a tree, straight and great, worthy to be the single column of such a palace. "Here are these trees," said they, "but the road is rough, and we can never transport them. We will go ask the king about it." When they did so, the king said, "By hook or by crook you must bring them, and that quickly." But they answered, "Neither by hook nor by crook can the thing be done." Then, said the king, "Search for a tree in my park." The builders went to the park. And there they saw a lordly sal tree, straight and well grown, worshipped by village and town, and to it the royal family also were accustomed to pay tribute and worship. And they told the king. Said the king, "In my park you have found me a tree. Good, go and cut it down." "So be it," said they, and went to the park, with their hands full of perfumed garlands and the like. Then hanging upon it a 5 bunches garland, and encircling it with a string, fastening to it a bouquet of flowers, and kindling a lamp, they did worship, explaining, "On the 7th day from now we shall cut down this tree. It is the king's command so to cut it down. Let the deities who dwell in this tree go elsewhere, and not to us be the blame." The god who lived in the tree, hearing this, thought to himself, "These builders are determined to cut down this tree, and to destroy my place of living. Now my life only lasts as long as this my abiding place. And all the young sal trees that stand around this, where dwell the deities my family, and they are many, will be destroyed. My own destruction does not touch me so near as the destruction of my children. Therefore I must protect their lives." Accordingly at the hour of midnight, adorned in divine splendor, he entered into the magnificent chamber of the king, and filling the whole chamber with a bright radiance, stood weeping beside the king's pillow. At sight of him the king, overcome by terror, uttered the first stanza. "Who are you, standing high in air, with heavenly garments wearing? From where come your fears, Why flow the tears which your eyes are bearing? On hearing which the king of the gods repeated 2 stanzas. Within your realm, O king, they know me as the lucky tree. For 60,000 years I stood, and all have worshipped me. Though many a town and house they made, and many a king's living. Yet me they never did molest, to me no harm did bring. Then even as they did worship pay, so worship you, O king. Then the king repeated 2 stanzas. But such another mighty trunk I never yet did see. So fine a kind in size and height, so thick and strong a tree. A lovely palace I will build, 1 column for support. There I will place you to abide, thy life shall not be short. On hearing this the king of the gods repeated 2 stanzas. Since you are bent to tear my body from me, cut me small. And cut me piecemeal limb from limb, O king, or not at all. Cut first the top, the middle next, then last the root of me. And if you cut me so, O king, death will not painful be. Then the king repeated 2 stanzas. First hands and feet, then nose and ears, while yet the victim lives. And last of all the head let fall, a painful death this gives. O lucky tree, O woodland king, what happiness could you feel? Why, for what reason do you wish to be cut up piecemeal? Then the lucky tree answered by repeating 2 stanzas. The reason why piecemeal I would be cut, O mighty king. Come listen while I tell. My friends and family all prospering round me well sheltered grow. These I should crush by 1 huge fall, and great would be their suffering. The king, hearing this, was much pleased. It is a worthy god this, thought he does not wish that his family should lose their living place because he loses his. He acts for his family's good. And he repeated the remaining stanza. O lucky tree, O woodland king, your thoughts must noble be. You would befriend your family, so from fear I set you free. The king of the gods, having given discourse to this king, then departed. And the king being established according to his advice, gave gifts and did other good deeds, till he went to the heaven. The master having ended this discourse said, Thus it is, brethren, that the Tathagata acts so as to do good to his friends and family. And then he identified the birth. At that time Ananda was the king. The followers of the Buddha were the deities which were embodied in the young saplings of the sal tree, and I was myself lucky tree, the king of the gods.